Hello, welcome back to Irish Racing and another Cheltenham Antepost preview special where today we're going to be going over the Supreme Novices, the Albert Bartlett, the Triumph Fil Dor, as well as the Ballymore Novices. Now joining me to discuss this are the teams. So we have Vincent Finegan from irishracing.com, Ed Quigley and Stephen Harris from bettingexpert.com. So of course, chaps, the first race of the festival, probably the one by default people are most excited about, the Roar, of course, the Supreme. Ed, I can see you nodding along. Take us through your makeup or how you're making of the race at this stage.
Yeah, you're quite right, Joe. This obviously Cheltenham last year was an empty kind of barren wasteland, wasn't it? No spectators there. There's going to be 65,000 people who are going to be going absolutely cock-a-hoot. And if we can get 3 or 4 of these protagonists to line up, I mean, what a race. I mean, we had a 7-runner affair last year. We've appreciated having a jog round. This really could be a Supreme for the ages if they all stay in one piece. You need Constitution Hill, Dysart, Dynamo, Jonbon, possibly Sir Gerhard as well. And then there'll be a whole host of unexposed types in behind them with wins next to the name looking to take them on. This is one of the races I'm most excited about, just over 6 weeks' time. Tentatively with Constitution Hill, I just really love the way he quickened up into Tolworth. I mean, he's from a very soft ground family, I would say. You know, his size Blue Brazil, of course, most famously. He's got Royal Pagaille and a couple of others who do love the mud, and he has been doing a lot of winning in his soft. But the way he doesn't kind of grind it out in soft, if you see what I'm saying. He quickens up, and who's to say on better ground he won't kind of take his level up another notch. It really is fascinating. I mean, Dysart Dynamo was absolutely scintillating, wasn't he, in the Moscow Flyer last time out? I mean, everyone sit up and take note. Jonbon, not quite as exciting at Haydock, but I think it was a case of just job done there, and the ground was very bad, and he was giving away weight, let's not forget. And so I think Nicky Henderson was quietly confident about that. I know Vincent will talk about Sir Gerhard later. I do think is the interesting one purely because there seems to be this assumption because Dysart Dynamo's arrived on the scene, he will be going the Ballymore route. I mean, I'm not so sure. He's got a lot of speed. He's running, I believe, in the 2-miler at the Dublin Racing Festival. If that's the way he goes, Willie Mullins isn't afraid to run his horses against each other. They're different owners. I think these big four, there's every opportunity these big four could line up. If they do, wow. I mean, what a contest. As I said, token pick is Constitution Hill. I just really hope they make it because as a spectacle, as I said, just set the scene, 65,000 in Cheltenham, the Roar goes up, those 4 horses going there. Absolutely spellbinding stuff.
Well, yeah, as you touched on there, Vincent, you will be going for Sir Gerhard as your pick at this stage. Just talk us through why that is and why not Constitution Hill?
Well, the first thing is there's 61 entries, but there's only 4 runners. That's the bottom line. And then there's only 2 stables. It's Constitution Hill and Jonbon from Nicky Henderson versus Dysart Dynamo and Sir Gerhard from Willie Mullins. Those stables have won the race the last 3 years. Appreciated, Shishkin, Classical Dream. I've no doubt the winner comes from those 4 runners. You can forget the other 57 entries. I don't think they count at this stage. These 4 look really high-class horses. Constitution Hill, obviously very impressive. Both starts at Sandown. You have Jonbon, who's Duvan's brother. Duvan also won this race. He cost 570 grand. Hasn't quite shown us on the track what he probably can do. I think better ground is the key here. We'll surely see the best Jonbon turn up. That's what we're hoping for anyway. And then you've got Dysart Dynamo. Could be absolutely anything. Unbeaten in 2 bumpers and 2 hurdles. 19-length win each time over hurdles. Obviously, at this minute in time, people talking it up as being Willie Mullins' number 1 pick here, and people tending to think that Sir Gerhard may go for the Ballymore instead. I'm not convinced. I think Sir Gerhard is made for this race. He's a champion bumper winner. That's the first time Willie Mullins has done that before with Champagne Fever won this race, having won the champion bumper as well. Willie Mullins, if you go back through the horses that he has won this race with, an awful lot of them appear to be horses that would want further than 2 miles. He seems to think that the key to this race is have a 2.5-mile horse and run it in the Supreme over 2. I don't think personally that Sir Gerhard, he's a very free-running type. He's always right on the bridle. I don't think he'll stay the 2.5 in the Ballymore. I think Willie Mullins will know that. He didn't enter him for the Albert Bartlett over 3. He only has 2 entries, the Supreme and the Ballymore as a reserve. go. I think he'll run here. I really do. He's a bigger price here than he is for the Ballymore. But in my opinion, just looking at the way Willie Mullins targets his horses at different races, you look at the ones he's won this with he won it with Classical Dream, which is now a 3-miler, runs in Gordon Park today. While we're filming this, he won it with Vautour, who was a 2.5-mile specialist. He won it with Champagne Fever, which had won a 2.5-mile race as well on a bumper. And then Tourist Attraction was his first winner of this, and that won a 2.5-mile maiden hurdle before it came to win the Supreme. So I think this is the type of horse he wants, is Sir Gerhard. Okay, he's a bit of a question because he's got another one here in Dysart Dynamo, but I'll be disappointed if Sir Gerhard doesn't run here, because I think it's his best chance of a win for the horse, and it was very impressive the last day of Henderson that it's made.
All right, let's get the view of you as well, Stephen. I know you're going for the favourite here, Constitution Hill, but what have you made of the other guys' comments so far?
Yeah, I agree with almost everything everyone's already said. I mean, I think if it's genuinely soft ground, it's 6 odd weeks away yet. We could get wet weather between now and then. If it's proper soft ground and a test of stamina, I fancy Constitution Hill. If it's good ground, I fancy Jonbon, and I suspect it somewhere in between. Ireland will win it. I mean, I think one's recent experiences that the Irish form is at least a stone better, and that is at the back of my mind. I do have slight doubts as to what Nicky Henderson's two have actually beaten. They have been beaten perhaps some fairly modest English horses, and instinctively Sir Gerhard and Dysart Dynamo, that form could be a lot stronger. We don't know. We're guessing. I mean, it's a fantastic race. It's probably the best race of the whole 4 days, to be honest with you. If you get all 4 of them lining up, it's Henderson against Ireland. There'll be a massive roar after the silence of last year. I don't think it's a race at the prices at the minute. I think we're talking about 2-1, 3-1. There's no value. I mean, you can't have a bet, and you don't need to have a bet, to be honest. It'll be a fantastic race to watch. I do think it's ground dependent. If it was like it is this weekend, I think Jonbon might murder them for speed. I was actually quite impressed with Jonbon. I thought he got a very average, overconfident ride, parked out wide. He made a mistake. He didn't settle that well. And I thought the way he picked up in atrocious ground at Haydock was quite taking. I know that's contrarian to how a lot of people have seen that, but I was quite impressed. Jonbon showed a new side to his character for me at Haydock, and I do think he's a glider with a turn of foot. And if it's that sort of Supreme, which we don't normally get, in fairness, I think he might be the one. But Constitution Hills looked like a machine. He's going to be a wonderful 3-mile chaser down the line, isn't he? So, yeah, fantastic race, as Ed and Vincent have said.
Yeah, well, I'll stick with you as well, Stephen. Moving on to the Ballymore on Wednesday. So, Sir Gerhard is actually entered and the Antepost favourite as we speak, but perhaps he doesn't actually run in the race. So give us your take and which is your direction into the race at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very hard race to have a firm opinion because we just don't know the runners. Everything's multiply entered up. At this stage, I've gone for Ginto of Gordon Elliott. I was really taken with the way he won at Naas. I think he'll appreciate a slightly stiffer test of stamina that the Ballymore will afford him. He's still improving. I think that's probably the strongest form line. And I don't know whether he's going to run in this or the Albert Bartlett, and that applies to his stablemate Hollow Games as well. I like Hollow Games to the Albert Bartlett. We're coming on to that in a bit. But Ginto for me, I think, has got the best form potential. Gordon Elliott's going to have a fantastic festival, training in his own name, of course, after Denise Foster in 2021 was at the helm. Ginto for me, but again, not a race I've got a strong opinion on at this stage.
And Ed, for you, I guess it's a similar line of thinking, right? No strong opinion right now, but how do you see the race shaping up? And who's your fancy at this early stage?
Well, Stephen makes a good point. I mean, the Supreme, you could at least get a bit more of a handle of which protagonists are going to turn up. Listening to Connections kind of comments here, it's very murky, isn't it? Kind of muddy waters. I mean, Sir Gerhard, just to touch upon this horse again, he is due to run in the 2-miler at the Dublin Racing Festival, and I'm assume on the back of what happens there, that will pretty much decide what happens in regards to his festival target. But he bolts up by 8-10 lengths over 2 miles. I can't see why they suddenly jump up to this. And obviously then your 7-2 market leaders gone. Dysart Dynamo, I can't see running in this either, personally. I think he's going to stick to 2. And it's that kind of story here. This could really dilute from, if you look at the top kind of 10, 12 in the market. The one in here who Nicky Henderson's pretty much said is going to be going towards this race, or at least they hope will line up at it, is Walking on Air, who at absolutely bolted up at Newbury last time out. 13 lengths hard held, beating absolutely nothing, and blah, 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 all the usual platitudes. Made one novice error over hurdles, but for a hurdling debut, looked very smart, I thought. Came home head in chest. Clearly has a massive engine. Now, it's interesting to go back to his bumper days. He finished runner-up in a Kempton bumper, which, funny enough, was the same bumper Shishkin won once upon a time. They ran walking on air in that. It seems to have been a bit of it's the bumper at Kempton the day after the Cheltenham Gold Cup, where no one's watching, everyone's got a hangover, no one really cares, and Henderson sends out one of his best bumper horses there. Well, walking on air was wow backed on the day, but disappointed, got wow beaten behind a Gary Moore type. They said, look, he's had a little niggle, he needs time to mature. He came out Newby the other day, and I really was taken by the way in which he went about things. And he's around the 10-1 mark. His form and what he's achieved is nowhere near those ahead of him yet, but there's twofold here. A, he hasn't had the chance to show his best form yet up in grade, and B, he's very much going to be going to the Ballymore. If you listen to connections, they're going to give him one more spin somewhere, probably at a low grade, and then kind of tilt it windmills. I just love the way he went about it. And in a race where there's so many horses in here who've got multiple entries at the festivals and connections saying they're going to leave it to the last minute, I'd be shocked if he's anywhere near 10-1 on the day if he jumps around and doesn't fluff his lines in his prep run. So, walking on air for me at a double figure price.
Lovely stuff. And Vincent, your take on the Ballymore as things stand?
Yeah, well, we've 95 entries to say horses multiple entered all across the place. All the same ones that the Supreme are in here. All the ones from the Albert Bartlett are also in here. The one that's most likely to run here and probably be a major contender is Ginto. Obviously, Gordon Elliott thinks an awful lot of this. He's got a couple of them in the same ownership. The Bective Stud ownership. Hollow Games is the other one, which was third to this in Nace the last day. Hollow Games got a relatively easy ride that day, I thought, and one to be looking for the future. Davy Russell was minding him when he knew he wasn't going to beat Ginto. I think he goes the other way. I think he goes for the Albert Bartlett Hollow Games, and he would definitely be a contender there. So Ginto being the main one of Gordon's here, been very impressive in 3 hurdle wins. He's won a grade 2 and a grade 1, both over 2.5 miles. And when he won each of those races, Gordon was saying he jumps real well, stays real well, and will stay further. So definitely a contender. He's won from his point-to-point days as well. He's won everything from 2 miles to 3 miles. He's won on everything from good ground to heavy ground. So there's no issue for him here. He will definitely stay. He will go on whatever the ground is, and he's a major contender. But for me, the one I like is a horse called Journey With Me. It's a Henry de Bromhead horse owned by Rob Corr. They won this race last year with Bob Ollinger, same connections, and this horse could be anything. Very impressive, winning his maiden hurdle, which was a very strong maiden hurdle in Leopardstown. He beat a horse called Manila Crooner of Gordon's, which Gordon has been underplaying, but I think is a decent horse. And the other one that was back in third was Kilcroot. Now, the last hurdle was omitted that day, but I think it didn't make a whole lot of difference. The Journey With Me, the horse was going to win one way or the other. And I'd be very keen on that at the sort of prices it is. You'd like to think if you were getting 7-8-1 Journey With Me, it will definitely run here. And it has a realistic chance considering its form in the Leopardstown race looks very good. And the stable obviously won this very easily last year with Bob Ollinger. Sir Gerhard, I touched on already. I'm not sure it will run here, even though it's currently favoured, but obviously I could be wrong. Willie has plenty of backup here. He's got What Do You Want? He's got a horse called Manila Cocooner, so it'd be interesting if in this race and in the Albert Bartlett, I think Manila Cocooner and Manila Crooner are both entered. It'd be fun to see a commentator try and sort those two out together. And he's also got a horse called Far Out and a very expensive one called Classic Getaway. So Willie has plenty of backup here. He doesn't need to run Sir Gerhard necessarily in this. He's got plenty of runs anyway. So for me, Journey With Me is the most likely at this stage.
Now, of course, our top advice would usually be to just wait a bit with regards to how much, when the non-runner no bet concessions come in, that's the kind of time to get the more secure bets on with regards to the festival. But there is potentially some value here. So now we're going to move on to the Triumph Hurdle. Now, Ed, I know you don't have a selection as such, but what have you made of previous years' runnings of this race, and how do you see the potential protagonists lining up for this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is a race. I just think it's an absolute minefield. I mean, again, there was some stat at some point where we hadn't seen the Triumph Hurdle winner for the Adonis from 4 in 7 years or something absolutely bonkers. You know, everyone goes overboard about some of the early season juvenile form, and the actual horse that will win the Triumph Hurdle hasn't even stepped foot on the race course yet. So it's that type of race I like to keep my powder dry on, to be honest with you. I respect the Gordon Elliott horses at Fil Dor, who's looked pretty good so far, but it's just a whole host of unexposed types, loads we probably haven't even seen yet. Of course, there's the big juvenile race at Dublin Racing Festival, which if you look at the entries of that, I mean, I don't think they're all going to turn up, but we could get a mega clash there between a few of them, and that will sort the pecking order out, at least in the Irish terms. It's just a race I'm happy to sit at this stage. The Triumph Hurdle is definitely a race of, you know me, Joe, at the previous August on getting my Cheltenham Antepost bets on. Well, this is very much one I'll be probably waiting to the week and find out who's declared, because I do think this is just very tricky, unexposed 4-year-olds. I'm happy to bide my time.
And now we're going to hand it over to Stephen, your take on the race. I think we talked a bit off air as well about the Triumph Hurdle being one for bookmakers in the past, but not so much recently.
Yeah, I mean, my old bookmaker hat, Joe, we used to sort of fill the hod up in the Triumph Hurdle. There were 30 runners and something popped up at 33 to 1. I remember John Quinn having a winner one year, and Pentland Hills, of course, went from a Plumpton novice hurdle a week before to win at 20 to 1 for Nicky Henderson a couple of years ago. So it is a race with a history of shock results, huge fields, blah, blah, blah. But in more recent times, it's been small fields. And of course, they've all got the choice to run in other races, basically. So it tends to be much less competitive than it used to be. Gordon Elliott's gelding, Fil Dor's won 3 from 3, hammered in the market each time, 5 to 4, 4 to 7, 4 to 9 for that graded win last time. Very impressive. The Irish form for juveniles is at least a stone better, more probably than the UK runners. I don't think they've really got an earthly. I'll be amazed if an Irish horse doesn't win it. And at this stage, Fil Dor looks the standout contender.
And I think, Vincent, you share that view, right? Looking at Fil Dor, you just think it should be the strongest one for the Triumph at this early stage.
At this stage, obviously, as Ed has alluded to earlier, we've got the Dublin Racing Festival to come. So a lot of these juveniles in Ireland will start coming out then and having a second or third run over hurdles. So we'll see a lot more about them. We'll know a lot more. But at this stage, Fil Dor looks head and shoulders above everything else. He's unbeaten, gets better with every run, goes on any ground according to Gordon as well. And if you look at this, he beats a horse called Lunar Power Noel Meads, a length and a quarter off Levels in Fairyhouse. Then he meets the same horse where he gives it gives it £3 and beats it 7 lengths. So £3 worse off, he beats the horse further. He just seems to be improving all the time. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't win the Triumph. I mean, I think he'll be one of the Irish bankers across the 4 days. Obviously, we've got lots of them, but he's definitely one of them at this stage. The other thing, a couple of other things to note, as Stephen has said, this used to be a cavalry charge with a huge field every year. In recent years, we'd only 9 runners a few years ago. We'd only 8 runners in this race last year. If Fil Dor turns up in Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival and wins impressively, this could be a 5 or 6 runner race. They'd all avoid this horse and go for the handicaps or other alternative races in Cheltenham. So you could have a very small field. One possible danger is a horse of Willie Mullins is a JP McManus owned horse called Claire Allen, which won a maiden in Leopardstown. Very green that day, it was a bit sketchy at the first, but won well, and you'd like to think that's going to the Dublin Racing Festival, so that could easily improve. Look, a slick jumper in Leopardstown the next day, and all of a sudden that's a contender against Fil Dor. But as we stand at this moment in time, Fil Dor is the one for me. One last thing to mention about the Triumph, which I always find interesting, is all these horses that will be going to the Triumph, they've been winning 2-mile hurdle races. They're all juveniles, 3-year-olds last season now, or 4-year-olds since we turned the new year. So they've very little experience. 2 miles is as far as they've run, but the Triumph is 2 miles, 179 yards, and it's up a hill. So you need something that can stay. That's the one thing you're looking for in a Triumph, is something that will definitely stay the trip.
Wow, great piece of advice there, Vincent. Thank you. And now we're going to move on to the final anti-post race. We're going to look at the Albert Bartlett. We've already touched on a lot of the entries, I think, in this one. But Ed, just take it over to you and how you see this one shaping up at the moment.
Well, yeah, I may have got this totally wrong, but the joint market leaders, Journey with Me and Ginto, I'd not be shocked still if neither make the gig here. Ginto in the Ballymore, I think, will run for Connections, and Hollow Games will run in this. Journey with Me is the interesting one. Again, it's going to come down to a bit of owner-trainer politics, isn't it? I think Henry the Bombhead keeps giving out this vibes about, Journey with Me, he's a proper galloper. He really stays, wants off ground. He's almost saying he's my Albert Bartlett horse. But after Jerry Colomb won the other day, Gordon Elliott came straight out and said he heads straight to the Albert Bartlett after discussing with Connection. So they've clearly got Jerry Colomb, which is my selection, earmarked for this, which... I mean, look, owners may run the same horses against each other. It's happened before, doesn't it? But I get a feeling, depending on what happens at Dublin Racing Festival, I think Journey with Me and Ginto both perhaps end up in the Ballymore. And I think Jerry Colomb, who's around an 8-9 to 1 poke, will shorten for this, definitely. His win at Thurles last time out, I mean, Vincent will probably be able to give more insight on the track itself. I mean, to me, that looked like a very kind of tight right-handed track. Like when you see Jerry Colomb, he's a huge galloping type. And so it was kind of what he didn't do as opposed to what he did do, which really made me excited. I think he's not the kind of horse who wanted to nip right-handed, run a tight track on pretty quick ground. It was all happening very quickly for him. Yet when Jack Kennedy asked him to go and win his race, he really lengthened and powered clear. If you compare that to 3 miles on the new course at Cheltenham, where off the top of my head, I think you've only got 2 flights of hurdles in the last 7 furlongs. You have that long galloping run to the last. That course is going to be absolutely tailor-made for him. I mean, this is a horse who'll be a 4-mile chaser in the not too distant future. I think it's fair to say. Proper galloper, will stay all day. Jerry Colomb for me. Again, half the battle is getting the right horses to the right races. I cannot, in a month of Sundays, even though he's got an entry into Ballymore, seeing Jerry Colomb going for the 2.5, a Journey for Me going for the 3-miler. Jerry Colomb for me, I think he'll start half the price on the day, and I think he's an intended runner, so he'll do.
Well, Vincent, let's get your point there about the type of track that actually these horses are running on. So, Ed alludes to the form at Thurles. How does that then translate to Cheltenham for you?
It doesn't normally, is the bottom line though. Alaho won in Thurles last year and went on to win the Ryanair and has won in Thurles again on that same meeting. I think the Jerry Colomb one. Thurles is an easy track. It's an easy right-hand track. Normally the reason that horses would run there, particularly better horses might go to Thurles, is because of the fact that they always have soft ground. That's the key to it normally, that it's decent ground. They do a lot of it's a schooling track as well on non-race days, and a huge amount of National Hunt horses would school there when they have a schooling day. You have hundreds of them turning up for session after session because they always know they're going to get decent soft ground. Whereas, as we know, Leopardstown is coming up now in another few days, and that's a worry, is the ground. We've got this weekend, we've Fairyhouse and Good to Yielding. We've got Naces also yielding, I think, at the moment for Nace. So there's no proper soft National Hunt ground for these horses, which is what they're all bred to want. But yeah, Jerry Colomb, obvious contender for Gordon. He's got so many contenders in this, and one of the ones that I was looking at was the one I think it's a little bit under the radar from Gordon's at the moment. He's been playing it down. Maybe it's because it's not as good as these other ones. In that case, he's got some serious horses, because the one I fancy is a horse called Manila Crooner. This ran in the same race as Journey with Me, which I'd mentioned earlier, in Leopardstown, where this split Journey with Me and Kilcroot. The last hurdle was omitted that day, which is interesting in itself for the fact that Journey with Me didn't half stay on the flat. And as Ed mentioned, there's only a couple of hurdles in nearly the last mile of this race, the Albert Bartlett. If Manila Crooner turns up, not certain to turn up by any means, because Gordon is already talking about possibly going to Clonmel on the 17th of February for a grade 3 over 3 miles. But after this horse split, Journey with Me and Kilcroot at Leopardstown, it was a wide margin winner of a maiden, then at Punchestown. It looks a fair horse. I'll be surprised if it's not somewhere in the pecking order, higher in the pecking order, but Gordon doesn't seem to mention it with the likes of Jerry Colomb, Ginto, Hollow Games. So if it's not as good as them, it makes me question the Journey with Me form, which again throws a real spanner in the work. But I'd like to think, from what I've seen, that Manila Crooner is up there with the better horses, and if it turns up here, has a definite each-way squeak.
No, yeah, Vincent, you did mention Hollow Games there as well. Stephen, I'll bring you in now, talking about the Albert Bartlett. Hollow Games is your selection. Take us through why you're thinking that at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I do think this is a minefield. I do think wait for the final decks, to be honest. Even non-runner, no bet. There's not a lot of value. It's priced up. Most of them are shorter than they'll probably be on the day, I suspect, unless you've got a real flyer like a 33 chance or something. I mean, Hollow Games is 7 to 1. I wouldn't be racing to take that, but I do think he won his point over 3 miles on really heavy ground. He won his first 2 bumpers. He was really impressive over hurdles in modest company. And then they upped him to the graded racing last time out, a grade 1 in fact. And his stablemate Ginto went from 7-4 into 5-4, and Hollow Games went from 5-2 out to about 4-1 on the exchanges. And it was one of those races, the market was remarkably prescient, which is often the case in Ireland and in England for that matter. And Hollow Games got a negative ride, buried up the inside, made a few mistakes. And I don't think, Vincent touched on it earlier, I don't think he got the hardest ride in the world. He finished with running left in the tank. He's very, very much going to appreciate a strongly run Albert Bartlett. He'll definitely stay further than this trip. I think the one perhaps cautionary thing would be I don't think he'd be effective on really good ground. I think he does want soft ground, but he's got loads more improvement to come. I think he's made for this race, and I think he'll run. If he turns up here, I think he'll go really well.
Well, as we can all agree, I think there's plenty to look forward to, plenty to mull over as well, depending on what happens in coming weeks. But that wraps it up for another Antepost special from IrishRacing.com. Thanks to Stephen Harris, Ed Quigley and Vincent Finegan. Be sure to drop your comments below as well if you have your own picks for these races. It's all a bit tricky right now, but yeah, we'll try and do our best. And be sure to subscribe to IrishRacing.com's YouTube channel for more videos coming very soon.